Good afternoon, welcome to the UK Column News. It is the 24th of July 2014 and it's just gone 1 o'clock. Myself, Louise Collins, Brian Gerrish and Mike Robinson are here in Plymouth, and we have a guest joining us today called Mickey, and he's from Nottingham and we'll be bringing him in a little bit later. But it's very hot again.
It's very hot. Somebody said it's very, very hot in South Wales, and I haven't seen other reports from around the country, but I would suspect a few of us are going to have some thunderstorms. Probably be a good thing, actually, because it's very hot indeed. Somebody said, why don't you get some air conditioning? Why don't you buy a £230 air conditioning unit? We say the big problem is not only installation, but also the fact that, of course, it's the noise which would come over. So we are prepared to suffer in order to bring you truthful reports and news across the country. Well, the country's in a pitiful state. Truth coming up to the surface quite quickly, and you picked this up.
Yeah, okay, so this Mail article is claiming that a Russian gentleman called Kirill Babayev, who, according to the article, is a Russian business magnate, told an audience that members of the British establishment are being paid by Russian oligarchs. How is this done? Well, it's quite simple, actually. Apparently, all it takes is a few £1,000s a month for an establishment figure to be given. They will then be given a seat on the board of a Russian firm. With that, it secures the firm secures itself on the UK stock market, and it enables the oligarch access to phone books and addresses and contact to influential people, and also to be invited to all the happening places at the time. So let's have a little look at some of our establishment figures who Babayev is talking about. First off, we have Lord Truscott. There he is on your right. He wrote Putin's book. Mandelson, there we all know Mandy Mandelson. He's actually a non-director of Russian giants Sistema. Next we'll have Lord Owen, and he's working for Epion Holdings and USM Holdings, both Russian firms. The other gentleman there is Lord Skidelsky, and he's a non-executive director of Russ Nano Capital. Next slide, we have a gentleman called Sir Michael Peat. He's a non-executive director of Evraz. And Lord Miners, and he's director of OJSC, another Russian firm. And the final slides are of Charles Hendry. He's working for Vital Group, which has ties to Nosnet, which are a Russian energy firm. And of course, the other gentleman there is Prince Michael of Kent, and he's actually the patron of Russian British Chamber of Commerce.
And head of Freemasonry as well.
And head of Freemasonry. I mean, basically the point to this article is that whilst, and what the gentleman, Mr. Bayev, was trying to get across to people is that whilst Cameron and his cronies are happy to demonise Putin, they are still more than willing to let the Russian money flow in and line their fat pockets with.
Well, before Mike comes in, because I know you're keen to come in here, Mike, I'd just like to say how fascinating it is to think that 20-odd years ago, when the Cold War was still on, of course, we were looking after the nation's security. We needed to know who was coming into the country, where the business interests were. And now we've got this extraordinary situation where David Cameron, of course, is inviting in the Chinese, still a communist country, in order to take over our strategic power generation infrastructure. And now we're starting to see links with Russian billionaires directly into Parliament, directly influencing the people who we are stupid enough at the moment to allow to govern our country. So, of course, the truth of the matter is that this is the reality of what's been operating behind the scenes for years. But I think we want to be very, very discerning about who we're talking about. Are we simply talking about Russian people, or are we actually talking about a criminal elite, many of whom were booted out of Russia when Mr. Putin got going?
Can I just say this also as a little bit of connection here to what's going on with regards to Syria, because apparently licences were also given to Syrian firms to export chemicals such as sodium fluoride and sodium potassium, given UK licences for them to be shipped out to Syria, even though the conflict had already been running nearly a year.
Yeah.
So we're happy to take the money from these countries while at the same time whilst bombing the hell out of them and demonising them.
I'm not.
No, we're not, I know,
Right.
but our establishment figures are.
The government is.
Yeah.
So we're dealing with criminals in Westminster. It's becoming more and more clear. Mike, what are your thoughts on the Russian money pipelines?
Well, I think everything you've said there is more or less correct. But what I wanted to really focus on was this, because this is reasonably unprecedented. Vladimir Putin on Tuesday held a Russian Security Council meeting. This is, I suppose, a bit like it's a defense meeting. You might say it's like Cobra, but on steroids or something. So, I mean, David Cameron doesn't normally televise those types of meetings, but in this case, Putin felt that he should. And he began by making clear his view that no one actually would dare attack Russia directly at this point with a military attack. And he said, I should make it clear from the start that obviously there is no direct military threat to the sovereignty and territorial integrity of this country. Primarily, the strategic balance of forces in the world guarantees this. But he went on to say, ever more frequently we hear of ultimatums and sanctions. The very notion of state sovereignty is being washed out. Undesirable regimes, countries that conduct an independent policy or that simply stand in the way of somebody's interests get destabilised. And he goes on to talk about the use of the coloured revolutions to do exactly that. They present Russia with an ultimatum. Either you let us destroy the part of the population that is ethnically, culturally and historically close to Russia, or we introduce sanctions against you. This is a strange logic and absolutely unacceptable, of course. We will react appropriately and proportionately to the approach of NATO's military infrastructure towards our borders, and we will not fail to notice the expansion of global missile defence systems and increases in the reserves of strategic non-nuclear precision weaponry. And then he goes on to talk about NATO's missile defences directly, and he says this is an offensive system. It's part of the offensive defence system of the United States on the periphery. Regardless of what our foreign colleagues say, we can clearly see what is happening. Groups of NATO troops are clearly being reinforced in Eastern European states, including in the Black Sea and the Baltic Seas. So he clearly feels that this is a particularly dangerous situation, although he's saying that the risks of any kind of direct military confrontation are such that he doesn't believe that it would happen. But nonetheless, his concerns are more the destabilization of Russia from the inside through the use of NGOs, and he's really hinting at that, but he's being quite direct about it actually. The same type of stuff that's going on in the Ukraine at the moment and in Russia. So as I say, unprecedented in the sense that he decided to televise this meeting and put a transcript of it in English on the presidential website.
Yeah, and we've also heard this morning that NATO is talking about creating a new headquarters in Eastern Europe in order to better control events on the ground in Ukraine. So the Russians here, I think, are picking up quite accurately what's happening, that there's basically a ring of steel being created around Russia, and here's NATO now pushing headquarters up towards the borders. Who's doing this? Well, at the end of the day, we can just say it's NATO, but of course real people are making the decisions, and we've got to look at David Cameron and the work done by former Foreign Secretary William Hague. Meanwhile, at home, are our MPs fit for purpose? Well, most of them are not. And of course, the subject, which is beginning to reveal who is who, is paedophilia.
Yeah, okay, so...
Significant article, I think,
yeah,
this
very.
one.
I saw actually a similar story in the Mail over the weekend. But here, the Daily Express are saying that Jill Dando passed her concerns and files with regards to paedophilia and abuse to senior management within the BBC whilst she was there. Many members of staff came up to her and started talking to her about Jimmy Savile's activities and other members of the BBC, and she started creating a file and getting some sort of dossier made up for herself. But apparently she told friends during the 90s that nobody in the management wanted to know or see and look at her findings about abuse within the BBC. So maybe some things are now starting to link together as to why she was suddenly murdered.
And why the BBC
possibly
has still not produced any in-depth investigation into Mr. Savile's activities. Well, witnesses murdered for whatever reason, or witnesses put in prison. So we'll just bring you back to the key factor that Melanie Shaw will be appearing in Nottingham Crown Court tomorrow at 11 o'clock. We'd be grateful for anybody on the ground in the Nottingham area to check with the court programme that is still going to happen, and we're asking as many people as possible to attend, as we've said, to see that the court do their job properly. Many of you have given information from letters that Melanie has sent to you. We understand that she is well, although very frightened as to what's happening around her. We also know that her NHS medication has only been administered in a very small part of its normal dose, which has given her some physical problems. And she's also talking about other prisoners in Peterborough who are denied medication. She's been particularly concerned about some women and the risks of deep vein thrombosis. We understand this is quite a normal procedure in prisons because, of course, prison governors can save money on their budgets by simply denying prisoners access to treatment which they would be entitled to under the NHS. So please, if you can travel tomorrow and can attend, we'd be very grateful if you do so. It's so important that both the government and, of course, Nottingham City Council and the police understand that the public are watching just what is happening.
I was just going to say, if anyone can maybe take notes and then maybe report it back to Brian of what's going on, and if it's before the show, maybe if there is any photos or whatever can be sent through to you, that would be handy, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Well, a little bit of black humour, but we're certainly not undermining the seriousness of what's going on. This picture was pointed out to us. We've put the link for the site on the bottom left-hand corner there. But what we were interested in was Nottinghamshire Chief Constable Chris Eyre having a cosy little chat with Theresa May. This was in Nottingham, we understand, in 2011, and it would appear that perhaps they were pondering the future. So, at the end of the day, we're not just talking about one children's home, we're dealing with a number. And, well, what is Theresa May doing at the moment? We're not sure if a replacement for the head of the inquiry, whether there's been a new name for that, and everything else we're seeing by the government at the moment is to keep things quiet. So if we take Beechwood alone, we're talking about 100 victims coming forward at the moment. What does that look like? Well, something like this, I think. At the end of the day, we are not talking about one or two children. We're talking about 100 that have come forward so far. And our key question is why Nottinghamshire Police, Nottingham Child Safeguarding and Nottinghamshire Council's not doing their job. And if we say, well, Beechwood is only one of 9 children's homes, and so we'll assume there were 100 at each home, we're talking nearly 1,000 child abuse victims, and this is simply one area of the country. Is this the reason that the police are not doing their job properly? Now, Melanie Shaw is one of the victims who's been deeply concerned as to what the police have and have not been doing. As we've already said, she was frightened of actions by the police. Why should an abuse victim be frightened of the police? Well, perhaps one man who can tell us a little bit more is Mickey Summers, who we should have on the line, I think.
Hi, Mickey.
Hi there.
Mickey, thank you very much for coming, making contact with us. We've been looking at some of your material on Facebook, so we've read what you've got to say about effectively a cover-up of child abuse in Nottingham. But tell us a little bit about yourself and what you think has been happening.
Basically, it's a non-stop cover-up, and it's collusion between the Nottinghamshire Police and Nottingham Council. They've both known, in my case, as far back as 2003, when I took it to the Nottingham Police and to the Nottingham Council. Nothing was ever done.
What did you actually? Can we ask what you actually reported? Did you?
Yes, I reported allegations of sexual offences committed against me, not only by an individual, but also by that was known to the family, but also about incidents within children's homes, which were run by Nottingham City Council.
Right. And you were aware of other victims at the time that you made those reports?
But I was aware of them because I've known about them all my life. I've never had the courage until 11 years ago to come forward.
Right. And what reaction have you had from the authorities to your reports?
Well, the 2003 case collapsed basically because it was not investigated by the police. Part of it has now been resolved, but two statements that were made in 2003 identified Beechwood and Hazelwood children's homes as places of abuse and places where I was mentally and physically abused. I was at Beechwood and sexually abused at Hazelwood. The statements given to the police, like my childcare records, have mysteriously disappeared, which are now subject to an independent police complaints commission inquiry.
Right, so we are not, well, I'm going to say we, the UK column, are not seeing what appears to be a deep and full inquiry by the police. And the inquiry that the police is conducting at the moment, you're now saying to us, well, there's irregularities with that, records have disappeared, and we've got the information commissioner involved whilst a police investigation is going on. Yes,
we do. Nottingham City Council maintained, not only to myself, but to a protest group and to the area city councillors, that the records were all destroyed in 1978. So I went down a different route. I asked for admissions registers. They told me that these did not exist. So I took it to the Independent Information Commissioner's office. They investigated, and the council quite graphically told them these registers did not exist and never did exist. I now have page 48 of the Beechwood Register, which clearly identifies me being there. I took it to the office of the Information Commissioner's office on Tuesday. That has now been handed over to their legal department for a criminal investigation.
Mickey, do you mind if I just ask you, how many years were you at the Beechwood home for? From what age group? How old were you?
I was there for the first time in 1966, age 12. I was there again after the first time in August. I went back in November and December. Then when I got sent to a remand home in Somerset, because I tried to blow the whistle on these abusers, I was brought up to court, and each time I came up to court, I was lodged there overnight. And then after leaving their system for a while, I went back in 69. Overall, I would say that I probably had between 10 and 12 admissions.
Wow. From age 12.
At the time you were, on the earliest date that you were trying to report what was happening, what was the reaction from was it the local council or social services you were saying what was happening?
Well, the first time that I tried to blow the whistle on it was after incidents that had happened where a retarded child was raped by the children's home manager. I ran away but was found. I blew the whistle on it to the social worker. The social worker had me removed to a remand home in Somerset, held incommunicado. Each time I tried to write out about it, all my letters were destroyed. This is all stuff that's been given to the police as part of my evidence. But that same social worker, en route to Somerset, actually raped me in a car park on the A453 just outside Measham.
Right. So in those earliest days, the social workers were protecting, covering up for the abuse that was going on. What sort of reaction have you had from Nottingham City Council, Nottingham County Council, in more recent times when you tried to tell about the abuse in these homes?
When I went to the police, I also went to the council last year, and I tried in vain for weeks to try and get someone to get in touch with me. They promised me that someone would. In the end, I found out who the head of Nottingham City Council was. His name is John Collins. And through social media, I found out where he lives because he lives next door to a friend of mine. That friend of mine got his home telephone number, and I contacted John Collins and left voicemails 23 times. On the 24th attempt, Collins answered the phone, and I eventually got put in touch with Ian Courier, who was the corporate director of Children's Services. But all the time I was in touch with Courier, all I ever got was stonewalled. He made me a promise when I was living in Rochester, New York, that should I return to England, he'd be more than willing to meet with me, cooperate with me, and help me get closure. Everything he promised, he's failed on.
Right. And have you, I believe that more recently still, the reaction from some of the authorities has been pretty hostile to you.
They have, because I'm seen as an irritant activist in some areas. I'm fighting for justice. Initially they wanted to offer me compensation. Well, yeah, I might be interested at the end of it, but I want answers, and I can't get answers without my social care records. And solicitors have told me that I have no chance of a claim anyway, based on the fact that I have no social care records. So I might as well fight them to the bitter end, tooth and nail, and try and get some answers, and make sure there's safeguards put in place for other people.
Well, you've said something very important there, because of course the immediate reaction from Nottingham City Council and County Council was to buy off victims, so some £250,000 of public money paid out. We understand that the judge who was running those civil cases has now said that, I think it's a male judge, I think he has said that he will not preside over any more of these cases until the police conclude their investigation. Have you heard anything along those lines?
I've spoken to a victim who was offered part of that deal. He contacted me via social media, having had my Facebook page used as a blog. And he told me that he refused their money because they wanted to attach a gagging order on it, and he would have no part of it. So he's going it alone without legal representation. Trying to get legal representation is a nightmare. You just can't get it without social care records.
Right. So it's the old story here, which is that they've either destroyed or they're hiding the records. No records and no police investigation effectively equals no crime at the moment. So you're doing an important job by being brave enough to waive your anonymity and to come forward so that we, the public, can see you and to hear your testimony. And I think it's interesting that, of course, Melanie Shaw was prepared to do the same thing. She also said to us that, yes, money was something, but at the end of the day, she was not going to be bought off because that simply meant that the criminals out there were never brought to justice, that the truth was never brought to the fore. So Melanie, very brave as yourself, and said she was not going to be bought off. We find it very interesting that she hasn't received what we would consider to be the care and consideration and protection that a victim should get. She's currently on remand in prison at the moment. Do you think there are other victims who will be prepared to join you as more of the truth comes into the public domain?
I've asked the council to run a fresh media appeal and name all the children's homes because it's a local case review for compensation claimants. It was revealed that there's 9 or 10 children's homes. I will here and now identify Hazelwood and Ashley House, which is in Worksop, as 2 of the venues of abuse. I've demanded Glenn O'Connell of Nottingham City Council, who is their legal department manager, to furnish me with the details of their insurers, because it's their insurers, according to Glenn O'Connell, who is dictating that they cannot do a news media information thing, so that they can get out the information to try and bring more victims forward. It's been put to them before to do it when Ian Currier was running the show, but Ian Currier, he told lie after lie, blaming Operation Daybreak, Yvonne Dells, who runs Operation Daybreak, and the Chief Constable of Nottingham. I challenged all those three individuals as to why they're allowing Nottingham Council to cover up things, and they categorically refuted that, and Currier refused to comment any further. He made those comments to a group of protesters that are there protesting on my behalf, and if need be, you can take statements from each and every one of them.
Mickey, do you mind if I just ask, has any media, any sort of like BBC or local media come to speak to you and wanted to hear your story, and possibly that they've been gagged to do it? Has there been any interest in helping you from media sources to get your story out?
The greatest asset that we've had to date has been a guy called Christopher Brees from the Nottingham Post and another reporter called Ben Ireland. The BBC East Midlands will not go near it at the moment until the end of the investigation. However, now that news has broken to them about the police being investigated by the Independent Police Complaints Commission and the Independent Information Commissioner's Office, they are showing an interest, but this is the first interest in my case that I've had from them. Basically, they've been told to step down and step away.
Right. Well, we'll just bring these two slides up on screen because we've been particularly interested by the reaction of MPs. Sorry, first of all, this is from your Facebook page. So this is showing some of the people protesting outside the City Council.
Maybe viewers, if you are on Facebook, that you could get behind Mickey's page and like his page and show him some support. And no doubt he'll be posting information up on there as to what's happening with this case, and also if there's any more maybe rallies or something going on. So yeah, Facebook viewers, could you possibly go and like that page for us, please? That'd be great.
Okay, well, here's some of the MPs. We're interested in all these people because the game they seem to play is they say, well, of course, this didn't happen in my constituency, therefore I can't get involved. So we're now at the stage where serious crime can take place in this country, of which there can't be much worse than serious sexual abuse of youngsters, and MPs just say, oh well, of course it's not on my patch, so I really can't get involved. So we're putting up these guys with a question mark. Of course, Ken Clarke is probably the big man amongst that. We'll wait and see what Mr. Ken Clarke does to get child abuse to the surface. But we'd also thought we'd mention the good guys, and John Mann, Labour here, is proving the exact opposite. I picked up that somebody, Tonyo Times, has got him on their little website, and look at what they're saying. I tell the truth, I do a good job, and that's why I don't want to be Prime Minister. It makes complete sense. So somebody else here out there, thank you for putting this up on your site, because it just shows us that where people do have the courage to speak out, ordinary people, the public, are picking up on it. And you also wanted to give Graham Allen a mention, I think, Mickey.
Yes, I did.
And how's he helped you, Mickey? Have you been speaking to him?
Yeah, since I met with Graham Allen, along with my friend Diana Hawley, at one of his community meetings, he's assisted us to take my case to the Crime Commissioner in Nottingham. It's down to the backing from him and Crime Commissioner Paddy Tipping that we've actually got the police backed into a corner where they've had to hand over the case to the Independent Police Complaints Commission.
Right. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people who would have a few reservations about what the so-called Independent Police Complaints Commission can do. But of course, all these organisations are under the spotlight, so the more pressure that comes on, the better. It's interesting that the police commissioner, I think, is in the local Nottingham Post, saying he's a bit sort of overawed at the power he's got. We'd just like to say perhaps he'd like to unleash that power on getting rid of the corruption in Nottingham Police and also bringing these child abusers to justice. Mickey, we're about at the end of the slot there. Is there anything you'd like to say? What would you like the public to be doing in UK at the moment to help?
I'd like everyone to converge on Nottingham and the city of Nottingham's residents all to uprise against their council and get rid of the lot of them. Enough is enough. As far as I'm concerned, they can do to me what they did to Melanie. They can put me in jail. My take on that is I will have a roof over my head, 3 meals a day, and I'll be taken care of. But the bottom line is my people will keep coming. No retreat, no surrender.
Oh, is that your wife there, Mickey?
Yeah. Okay. All right, Mickey, thank you for joining us. We will be talking to you again. Thanks very much for joining us and being brave enough to stand up there to be counted. Well, we had a brief mention of the BBC, so let's just have a look at this. It's the BBC in 2006, and they're having a little competition for the sexiest MP, Nottinghamshire's sexiest MP. So this is a mature BBC at work. Is there any more pathetic organisation in this country than the British Broadcasting Corporation? I don't think so. Well, we were given some other information by a viewer overnight, and we found this particularly interesting. They're pointing out this incestuous relationship between Nottingham Police and Nottinghamshire City Council. And we've got a new organisation here, Nottingham Community Protection. And when we went looking on the website, we were pretty interested to see that basically they can hand out fixed penalty notices. They can do all sorts of things. But here was something that interested us: unauthorised distribution of free printed material. And we can tell you that Nottingham City Council can charge between £50 and £400 for leaflets about, for example, your missing cat. They can...
Sorry, just to clarify, that's for a licence to give you the right to distribute those leaflets?
Correct.
Yeah.
Oh, so you have to apply for a licence to hand out...
And they have to approve the leaflets before you start handing them out.
My goodness. Okay.
So what we're getting at here, and Mike is going to be sort of coming on to things happening under the surface in this country. Are we dealing with the police? Well, we're not sure. Are we dealing with the council? We're not sure. What we've got is this pretty dangerous collaboration going on, where, of course, the police and the councils both acting outside their authority. And if the councils need to make some money, of course, the motorist is a prime target.
Indeed, councils are actually now cleaning up. Profits from parking fines are up by a quarter in the last 4 years, and the amount of money in total is set to rise to £650 million per year. It is now looking like councils are using the fines as some form of taxation. When asked for a comment, Eric Pickles, who is the community secretary, said the law is clear that parking charges should not be used by local authorities to raise revenue, but they are being used to raise revenue, especially the clandestine, the ways that they do it, the hiding. I even saw them put a parking ticket on a disabled man's car the other day when he popped in to get his prescription for the chemist. Well, they were down the corner. He gets out to get his prescription in his hand, hobbling along he was, bless him, and out comes from behind the side of the, down an alley, comes a pocket and whacks it. I went and tried to confront him, but I wasn't going to get anywhere. He was getting rather irate and said, "What are you doing?"
Disabled people are a nuisance.
Yes,
the government is going to get rid of them. There's no doubt about this. If we allow this regime to unfold, and you can't get rid of people, you might as well make a bit of money out of them.
I was also told that councils don't send if people haven't paid their parking tickets on time. They're apparently no longer going direct to Northampton. They've got kind of some sort of deal with the bailiffs, and just a standard letter which mentions Northampton judges will just go directly out from the bailiffs, so you don't get any notification from Northampton.
Yeah, makes sense.
Can we just clarify that the disabled people are a nuisance statement was actually sarcasm?
Well, I hope that came
I hope people
across.
would have known that, yeah. Thanks, Mike.
But we're being absolutely serious where we say that people who are not able to work as required by the state will increasingly be targeted. This is the agenda that's coming to the fore, not only, of course, within David Cameron's Conservatives, but that's what will continue with the Miliband regime. But some good news, which we reported yesterday, of course, was the fact that in Nottingham, about 300 people, we now understand, turned up to support somebody against the bailiffs and stop an eviction. And in the reports that we had in overnight, people said an important thing is there was a broad mix of people. So there were different religions, different races, different ages, different parts of the city, a good social mix. So people, seeing what truth is and coming out on the streets. Yeah,
I know Tom and Sue are both really, really grateful for all the support they received yesterday, and we will keep you updated and on their plight and what's happening, and if the scumbag bailiffs decide to turn up again. Go on.
Yes,
sorry.
We'll let you off with that today.
Sorry, I couldn't help it.
Well, we'll just move on, shall we?
Sorry.
Yesterday's blockade, of course, has actually been picked up by one newspaper at least, and that's the Nottingham Post, and well done to them. But I suppose they didn't really go into the detail or the substance of what the allegations of fraud were about against the Bradford and Bingley Building Society. But at the end of this little report, they do say, quote, UK Asset Resolution Limited on behalf of Bradford and Bingley has confirmed the eviction did not take place today due to safety concerns. So who is this UK Asset Resolution Limited? Well, here they are. Here's their website. It turns out they say that they are a holding company established to bring together the government-owned businesses of Bradford and Bingley PLC and NRAM PLC. So who's NRAM PLC? Here they are. They say about themselves, NRAM are dedicated to providing you with the support and information to help you move forward with your mortgage. Northern Rock was nationalised by the government and taken into public ownership in February 2008. The organisation was then restructured in the 1st of November 2010 to two separate entities, Northern Rock PLC and Northern Rock Asset Management PLC (brackets NRAM). Known as NRAM PLC since the 16th of May 2014. Northern Rock PLC was then sold to Virgin Money in 2012, but NRAM PLC remains in public ownership, and our core business is now mortgage servicing, apparently also theft of property. So that's how it appears. There you have it. This alleged fraud is being supported by companies wholly owned by the government, and therefore I don't think it's too unfair to say that this is government-sponsored property seizure. But really, it's a bit ridiculous when this is being run by companies owned by the taxpayer.
It's pretty vicious, isn't it? Fraudulent courts, fraudulent documents, fraudulent government, and sending in the thugs to try and repossess properties. A little bit of a backlash in the chat rooms about what we've said about bailiffs. We just have a little unwritten rule that UK column doesn't indulge in bad language. Well, Mike, we haven't mentioned this man for some time.
Yeah, Francis Maud. Well, he is crowing. Yesterday, he was crowing about 100 new businesses have been spun from the public sector and are delivering nearly £1.5 billion of public services. That's what he announced yesterday. And he was speaking at a Downing Street reception, joined by chief executives from other mutuals, including the Behavioural Insights team, and that, in fact, that was the one that they particularly wanted to cite on their press release, often known as the Nudge Unit, which has more than doubled its headcount in less than 6 months of trading as a mutual joint venture. Now, here's what he said. He said, as part of our long-term plan for stronger economy, we are determined to drive up public sector productivity, which flatlined from 1997 to 2010. We need to innovate new ways of delivering better services for less money, so we are helping public sector workers spin out to form mutuals. There are now 100 public sector mutuals across England and Wales. These are new businesses employing 35,000 people and delivering services from community health to libraries. We know this is just the beginning of a massive transformation. We've even had interest from a fire service looking to mutualise. So what does this represent? Actually, it represents a wholesale privatization of the civil service. They're attempting to do it by stealth, so no big public share offers announced, just a quiet spin out, as they call it, of civil service jobs into new businesses owned and run by the civil servants themselves. And then at some point in the future, without doubt, these mutuals will be bought up by the likes of Serco and G4S. But in the meantime, the civil servants will have they'll effectively be bought out of their public sector pension agreements through the fact that they will be owners of these mutuals, and when they are bought up by the large corporates, I'm sure they'll get a nice fat payoff as a result.
This is creeping fascism, isn't it?
Yes.
Mike, because we've got big government and corporations, global corporations, who are taking control of everything. This is just an intermediary step. Big society, the big lie, to make people believe that it's looking after the little person, when in fact it's doing exact opposite, bringing government control in.
Now, of course, one of the big parts of this is the big society, which is all part and parcel of the same agenda, really. And I was just interested in this because Nesta, which is the National Endowment for Science, Technology and the Arts, you tend to find Nesta investing in the same types of projects as you might find Esme Fairbairn or Joseph Rowntree, or these types of foundations pushing their money into big society projects. But this article here in the third sector is about Liam Black, who was a former trustee at Nesta before it became a charity in 2010. So, until 2012, I apologise. Nesta was a non-departmental public body until that point, and then it magically became independent. So on Twitter yesterday, he was, or I think this was Tuesday, he was claiming that Nesta was, quote, forced to provide funding for the Big Society Network. So this organisation actually didn't have control over its own money. Now, the article doesn't specify who forced Nesta to fund Big Society Network projects, but actually this tweet, these series of tweets from this man seem to have been in response to a National Audit Office report criticising the Cabinet Office of Francis Fraud directly, because of they were focusing on £2 million of funding which was awarded to the Big Society Network, and the National Audit Office didn't like how that was handled. Like I say, Liam Black's tweets didn't specify who was behind the bullying, but the implication is that his tweets in the National Audit Office report were not unrelated.
Big society, unbelievably dangerous. I think we need to prioritise some of the articles that we've written on this, because a lot of people think big society's disappeared.
Yeah.
On the contrary, it's growing rapidly with community organisers and the training of over 100,000 young people, where the objective is to get those young people involved in the third sector and bringing in a political agenda in the mistaken belief that they're actually helping society. So we'll stay on the game with that one. Over to Gaza.
Before I start on Gaza, apparently there's breaking news: an Air Algeria flight has disappeared with approximately 1,000 people. I think Michael's just put it up in there.
Well,
it's not, we're not sure, but apparently there's another plane gone missing. Okay, now to Gaza. When I checked on RT first thing this morning, they are claiming that Israel has launched a ground incursion on the Gaza Strip, and the latest that I had, that a school had been bombed, sheltering 1,500 people, and it was hit by Israeli fire. But RT are doing a great live up-to-the-minute updates on Gaza. Now, I'd just like to remind people of having, if they want to go and have a look, if we just bring this map up, it's the occupation and the loss of land, the Palestinian land between 1946 and 2000. Now, obviously, they've even got a lot less land than this now, going now to 2014. But, I mean, as you can see, back in 46, Brian, it was all Palestinian, and then slowly, after the war and everything comes in, here we go, it just suddenly declines, and 2014, as I say, they have a lot less. Okay, so this Telegraph article we're going to bring up now is naming the amount of Palestinian children killed by Israeli forces, and they're claiming that 132 approximately 132 children have died and been killed since the start of this offensive 2 weeks ago. And here the Telegraph outline a map of where the children have come from. So you can see 49 children in Gaza City and 38 in Khan Yunis, is that? I can't see, but anyway, the numbers, the figures are just growing, and I still believe there's only been about 28 Israeli people have been killed. And here we have The Guardian reporting that 700 Palestinians, now it's past that, have been killed. Now this next article here from The Guardian are saying that an Israeli humanitarian charity has been banned from putting out an advert which is naming the children who have been killed. 17 of the Gaza conflict and human rights group BT Salem had taken out an advert listing the names of dead children killed in Gaza. The Israeli Broadcasting Authority have stepped in by banning the advert, claiming the content was politically controversial. BT Salem claim to be a group of academics, attorneys and journalists there to educate the Israeli public and policymakers on human rights. And BT Salem are appealing the ban, and their adverts are demanding to know what was so controversial. And in a statement they are saying, so far more than 600 people have been killed in the bombing of Gaza. More than 150 of them have been children. But apart from a brief report on the number of fatalities, the Israeli media refrained from covering them. By Thursday morning, the death toll in Gaza had exceeded 700. And they went on to say IBA, which is the Israeli Broadcasting Authorization, say broadcasting the children's name is politically controversial, but refusing to do so in itself is a far-reaching statement. It says the huge price being paid by civilians in Gaza, many of them children, must be censored. So, yeah, not good. They're censoring it.
Personally, I'd like to see the names of all the children who've died, whether they are
Israeli
Palestinian or
yeah.
Israeli, because could we stop this if the world's best political minds were put to it? Of course we could. So something very different is going on here. We're going to end with a reminder that Robert Greene, campaigner against child abuse, is on his 63rd day under house arrest, simply on the whim of Alex Salmond and his junta in Scotland. We understand that Robert looks likely to be denied legal aid to pay for his proper representation in his defence at his trial, which is going to be held in January 2015. So we wait to see whether Robert is going to remain reporting to Warrington Police every day. He's done 63 days so far. Is he going to continue doing that until his trial in 2015?
Shocking.
It's a joke.
It is a joke.
It is a
Absolute
joke, but of course it's a very serious joke. But what is being demonstrated to the public here is that Alex Salmond and, of course, Sir Stephen House, Chief Constable, Kenny McCaskill, Justice Minister, have absolute power over anybody living in England and Wales. So anything can happen north of the border. You can be arrested. You might come back, or you might stay in prison in Scotland. But if you come back to your own home, then they can enforce house arrest. So never mind the criticisms of China or other countries with dictatorships. We've got the dictatorship unfolding in front of our eyes in UK.
Can we just put a little announcement
We've
out?
got it.
Oh, well
We've got
done.
it.
Okay, so the motorway blockade M25 at South Mims tomorrow is at 10 o'clock, meeting at South Mims. And then the following day, on the Saturday, Screaming to Be Heard conference is taking place down Holloway Road. And if people are want to join, they can contact Andrew Peacher 2013@gmail.com, and they can go on Facebook, put Children Screaming to Be Heard, and find out all the details. But it is at the at Holloway Road on Saturday.
Brilliant. Okay, well, there you have it. Please get talking to friends, relations, neighbours, the general public, warning them what's happening. We need to push much harder if we're going to start breaking open the system and getting rid of some of these criminal MPs, and I've got to say some of the criminal police officers at the moment who are still protecting paedophiles in the establishment. It's up to us. Thanks.
Can I just say bye to everyone and thank you to everyone who came last Friday to support, and I'll see you at the end of August.
Brilliant. Okay,
Bye.
Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.